Where am I? What's going to happen to me?
Hey, it's 12:05. Hello there and welcome, y'all. Welcome, y'all. I'm trying. I'm practicing. Merry Christmas again. It is 12:06 on this Wednesday, December 27th. We are still celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and that'll be all week long. Yeah, this is the Matt Murphy Show, and I'm Joan Jones. And you may have heard on that forecast just a couple of moments ago that we'll get some sunshine, 54 today, but they're talking about this little tiny chance of snow, maybe Friday and then again on Monday. So, that's to me exciting because I kind of miss that snow thing coming from the Northeast. So I'll look forward to that. And I'm sure not everybody does, but it's kind of fun to think about. So today, Belle, good morning to you. Good afternoon to you. It is 12:06. Hiya.
Yep.
When I started out yesterday, I started the show by telling everyone that, I take this long drive, and on my way up here, I noticed that there was the traffic was pretty good, but there was a lot of state troopers out on the road, and they were pulling people over, and I saw quite a few. Don't you know I got pulled over last night on my way home?
Did you?
Yes.
Did you get a ticket?
No, I did not.
What were you pulled over for?
So I thought I had, my cruise control on. I wasn't speeding, thank goodness. I did a stupid thing. I was talking on the phone, and even though I have Bluetooth and even though there's a microphone right, above me, I had my phone and I was holding it out in front of me, not to my head, but, out in front of me. And the officer pulled me over. He said, we don't allow that. You can't have your phone held in your hand in any fashion. So he took my information, went back to his car, and, and he came back and said, don't worry about it. Just stop talking on the phone.
That's a stupid law.
Well, you know what? It kind of is because it wasn't held to my head. It was in my hand. But I won't do that again. That's for sure.
Don't change the radio. Don't have a beverage.
Exactly. So here we are on this Wednesday, and I want to remind you that the Super Talk and text line is 615-737-9986. And I also wanted to let everyone know that I'm going to try to talk slower today and throw in a y'all here and there because
bless your heart.
Bless my heart. So I learned that too, moving here to Tennessee, the bless your heart thing. I got home yesterday and my son called and he said, no, this is my son who lives in Murfreesboro. And he said, Mom, it sounded really good and all, but you talk fast and people around here don't talk fast. So you have to chill. So that's my goal today, and I hope I make my goal and make my son want to listen. 12:08 here, and there's a couple of things that have happened this morning, so pretty interesting stuff too. In case you missed this one, there's multiple news outlets that are reporting that Republican presidential contender Vivek Ramaswamy has stopped spending money on television ads, and he doesn't have any TV ad reservations booked. A little more than 2 weeks to go before the Iowa caucuses. And, that's, for the most part, just not good news for a campaign. But his campaign is still saying that they are spending money on ads. Just they're not doing TV right now. They're focused on bringing the voters that they have identified out through advertising, mail, text, live calls, door-to-door communications, things like that. But it's just no more TV. So you make of it what you will. Typically, when you hear that has begun in a campaign, it means the end is near. Also, if you've been paying attention to the stock market, you know that stocks were up yesterday. The Dow gaining 159, the Nasdaq rose 189. S&P 500 was up 20. Today, things are looking pretty good again. And in fact, year to date, the blue chip Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 13%. Set some new all-time highs. the S&P 500 up 23% on the year, and the NASDAQ up 42%. So pretty good, and also really good for our 401ks. Now you can, take your hands away from your eyes and look at your 401k for a change without really cringing. So that may be what we consider to be a Santa Claus rally. But there's a little bit of chatter on the street about what's going to happen with interest rates next year. And the Federal Reserve has already said it's going to aim for 3 rate cuts next year. That's good, because that means our interest rates for the things like our credit cards, if you want to go buy a car, home mortgages, all of that could be coming down. And Bankrate says that today, the average interest rate to buy a home is at 7%. So it's not an easy decision when you go to buy a home to have a 7% mortgage. In fact, that's pretty high, and it puts a pretty big strain on buyers, especially first-time buyers, because just 3 years ago, if you remember, we were buying homes at 3 or 3.5%. And now 7% means that's double what you'll pay for just for the principal and interest portion of your mortgage payment. It's a lot. So a lot of uncertainty lately. We keep hearing from the Biden administration that Bidenomics is working and that prices are down, and people bought lots of stuff for the holidays. And I heard Ken this morning talking about the fact that we weren't really buying electronics. We weren't buying the big things, the TVs and all of that. What we were buying was a lot of clothes and a lot of food for the table, because that's what essentially we can afford to buy right now, the necessities. And so we may be headed for what they call an economic soft landing. And if you remember, not that long ago, the Biden administration changed the definition of a recession. Remember this? This happened in July of 2022. They said it was a blog post, I think, that they said that the longstanding definition of recession has been a decline that's lasting 2 or more consecutive quarters, but that really doesn't apply here. And all of a sudden, we changed what a recession was. So now it was saying that while some maintain that 2 consecutive quarters of falling GDP constitutes a recession, it's neither the official definition nor the way economists evaluate the state of the business cycle. I worked at the Wall Street Journal at the radio network, and we always defined 2 consecutive quarters of falling GDP as a recession. It was standard. It didn't have to be written in a book somewhere, but it was what happened. Well, when that happened, when they changed the narrative to the everything is just fine narrative, a lot of people paid attention, and they weren't really feeling really good about the economy. And likewise, we pretty much aren't now. There's a lot of people who are very concerned about the things that you still can't afford at the grocery store. We went to the grocery store for Christmas, came out with the things that we needed, and it was well over $200. It was only, the 4 of us and a baby. So we're not talking about a huge expenditure. And we were just buying the things that we needed to catch up on the rest that we had already done. We came out of there $200 poorer because of the things that we were buying for Christmas. So a lot of questions about why we're still increasingly drowning in debt and taking trips to the grocery store that are just so incredibly painful. And you can, tell us what you're thinking about this at 12:13 here. The lines are open. Please do give us a call. The super text line, give us a call, give us a text. Super text line 615-737-9986. And somebody texted in that, remember when interest rates during the Jimmy Carter presidency were 16 to 18%? I do remember that. I was selling real estate with my dad at that time, many years ago in southern New Jersey, and the interest rates were so bad that people they weren't buying at all, that nobody was selling. I mean, why would you sell? Nobody's going to come see your house anyway. It was an incredible time. So we're not looking at that kind of interest rates, but we could be. Who knows? We keep hearing about from the Biden administration that everything's just going to be okay. Everything's going to be perfectly fine. But really, it hasn't been perfectly fine. It's been perfectly difficult to go ahead and get the things that we are in need of, especially at the grocery store. And so But there's somebody else who texted in and said that they're a truck driver and they're listening today. We appreciate that. Love that that people are calling even from their trucks today. And somebody else texted that Ben Shapiro talks really fast to the extent that it's ridiculous. I get that.
Yeah, that's a 4-hour show in 3 hours.
That's exactly right. I have difficulty when you play it back. If you do it on YouTube, you can slow it down a little bit. Sometimes I do that just so that I can catch up with what he's saying because I can't understand him.
And when he gets angry about something,
Yeah.
he gets even faster.
Yes. And who is it that's his cousin on the show? On one of those shows on Daily Wire, I can't remember. She talks just like him. She's got the same staccato. She talks really fast, and I can't understand her either. So it must be an in the family thing.
If you're wondering who we're talking about, it's our host from 10 to 1. Yeah, I think it's 10 to 1.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. He's terrific. I absolutely love him, but sometimes I just can't understand him. Somebody else said the Bidenomics are working, but they're working to make us poor, and I believe that. I am in with that, and so that's what's happening as far as the economic picture is going today. There's also another story that kind of hit just before I came on the air here, and that's that the Michigan Supreme Court rejected the attempt to remove former President Donald Trump from the primary ballot there. So the Michigan Supreme Court didn't do what the Colorado Supreme Court did. They decided that, no, they're not going to try to remove former President Donald Trump from the primary ballot. But they're saying that most experts think that another effort is going to be made to kick him off the ballot in the general election. If that becomes, an area where they can try again, if he becomes the nominee, they're going to try to kick him off the ballot one more time. Also today, we told you about Vivek Ramaswamy and how he has he stopped spending money on campaigns, on TV campaigns. Also today, being reported by Bill Malugin at Fox. He's that guy that's always down at the border. And he has just some of the best reporting on what's happening at the border crossing. He said that a Chinese national was caught crossing illegally into Roma, Texas, and Maine. That Chinese national has now been convicted after several child porn videos were found on his phone, including a child under the age of 5. This guy's 45 years old. His name is Tong Sung, and he's facing up to 20 years in federal prison.
He was just looking for asylum.
Yeah, probably. It's a family, because it's families that cross the border all the time. That's what we're told, right? CNN did an interview from 8 years ago with Aaron Burnett. Aaron Burnett interviewing President Trump, and I dug it up because I just thought that this didn't age well, and it's so appropriate.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people.
Now, you've tried to clarify this statement in recent days, Anno, but I guess the question comes down to this. Do you regret saying that specifically about rapists, or do you stand by it?
No, not at all. Of course, it's not only Mexico. If you let that run a little bit longer, it talks about people coming from all over. They're coming from all over. They'll soon be coming, and probably already have, be coming from all over the world. You're probably going to have you're probably going to have terrorists coming from the Middle East. Somebody said, we don't have terrorists. They don't even know because they don't know who's coming.
Yeah, they don't know who's coming. And didn't that, as far as the Aaron Burnett part of that, didn't age well, but my goodness, President Trump was right on. He was spot on saying that people are going to be coming from all over the world. And we're seeing now that that's so true. And today is the day that there's going to be some high-level meetings in Mexico with the government of Mexico in the United States, talking about how to stop the flow. Just as another surge, an incredible surge. I think they said 15,000 migrants are on their way. They've hopped onto trains and they're on their way to the border now. And they're going to be looking for, more asylum here in the United States. And they're not just necessarily people from Mexico or from, Guatemala. We've seen those videos of the Chinese nationals all lined up, some of them with suitcases with rollers on them. They weren't rolling them all the way through Mexico on their way to the United States. They were not. And they're looking for asylum here in the United States. Oh, my goodness. There's more about this, more about the results of people who come here to the United States from other countries and what the results are here in the United States. And it's from an independent journalist. I told you yesterday I really like to follow these people. Her name is Sarah Carter, and she was reporting some interesting things yesterday, too. I'll tell you about that coming up in just a couple of moments. It's 12:20 here on Super Talk 99.7. Hey, it's 12:23 here at Super Talk 99.7, and I'm Joan Jones, sitting in for Matt Murphy. He'll be along at 3 o'clock, by the way. Wanted to continue along this vein about what's being reported today about the migrants that are coming across the border. Independent journalist Sarah Carter says that now the Chicago Department of Public Health, Chicago, by the way, sanctuary city, bring them all here until they come all here, and then we don't want them anymore. Anyway, Chicago Department of Public Health is warning about a rise in cases of chickenpox because so many people crossing the border do so without their vaccines and they don't test them. I thought the vaccines were, of paramount importance. I thought if you don't have a vaccine, you're a vaccine denier. People are coming across the border and they don't have their vaccines. Chickenpox especially. And in Illinois, there's a public health crisis over the rise in congenital syphilis cases. California has issued an alert about an increase in monkeypox cases statewide. Now, the CDC says that refugees and asylum seekers don't have to be, they're not required to comply with vaccine requirements before they come into the U.S., but if they want to become lawful permanent residents, they have to. The CDC publishing what they call recommended, not mandatory vaccination program for school-aged kids. Hang on. So these kids can come across the border with their parents and the parents can say, no, we don't want that. We're not going to have vaccinations for our kids. And those kids are going to be able to go to school. But if you did that, if you decided you didn't want your children to have vaccinations, they can't come to school. There's just so much that's wrong. And of course, they're not going to be talking about any of that today when they go and have this meeting between the Secretary of State and the President of Mexico when they talk about how to keep these numbers of migrants streaming in across the border from coming to the United States. There is another story today that kind of just broke this morning, and I've seen the filing, so I know this is true. I haven't really seen it, though, in any of the newspapers so far. But there's a new court filing in the January 6th case in D.C., the one that charges President Trump. And Jack Smith, you know him now, he says that the former President Trump has already signaled his intention to blame the events of January 6th on Capitol Police, the National Guard, the district's mayor. And he said the comments that were made in a CNN town hall in May of this year mean that he already knows how Trump is going to defend himself. Former President Trump at that time attributed the riot to Congress's inaction, to the district mayor, who also did not act to get the National Guard to the city. And he said that they were allegedly in charge, as you know, of security, and they didn't do their job. Now, that's what he said, the former President Trump, during this town hall in May. So in the filing, Jack Smith says that the arguments are factually false and they preclude the rules of evidence. You know what that means? That means that he is asking this judge to disallow Trump to have his defense. If that's his defense, that's his defense. If it's something that Jack Smith doesn't like, Jack Smith can argue against it in court. But what he's doing is trying to get the judge to cut him off at the knees. And you know this judge is going to do it. She has already said she doesn't like President Trump. She has already made all kinds of various comments about him in the public square. He wants to make sure that President Trump does not have the defense that he wants for his court hearings and for his defense. It's unbelievable. And then there's another story today, and this one I just thought was the weirdest story in the world, and so I had to bring it to you. I know you all are going to love this one. I know y'all are going to love this one. This is just so weird. There is a single guy, one guy, who is unhappy and his feelings have been hurt by President Trump. I think this guy still wears skinny jeans. He is on a campaign, a one-man campaign, to remove Donald Trump's star from the Walk of Fame. Now, remember back in 2018, the guy who attacked his star with a jackhammer and city council had to replace it at that time? And then there was a street artist that attached, I think it was bronze or something, prison bars over it. And Hollywood Trust, the historic trust there, had to spend $20,000 repairing that and the jackhammer incident. People have thrown paint on it. It just goes on and on and on. This guy is named Andrew Rudick, and he's making it his life goal to get the star removed from the Walk of Fame. Now, the LA Times has reported that over the last 3 years, this guy has submitted public records requests, retrieved case documents from LA County Superior Court. He has spoken at city council meetings and corresponded with government officials, and he is determined He said the reasonably conveyed message to millions who have walked past that plaque since 2021 is that the city has an endorsement of a man who attempted a coup against the United States of America. Now, this guy has an opinion. Hey, we all have them, don't we? We've heard this before. He doesn't want anybody else to have any other opinion than his, and he's gunning to have President Trump's star on the Walk of Fame removed. It's the most incredible thing. The spokesperson for the LA County Republican Party is saying that Los Angeles government fails on every level, that they should focus on their job, which is getting all the sidewalks clean and safe. But instead, they're focused on this. So far, the LA government is saying, yeah, that's not what we can do, and we're not going to attempt it right now. We'll have to see where this goes. We've got more coming up here on Super Talk 99.7. Right now, 12:30. 12:33 here at Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and I'm Joan Jones in for Matt Murphy, and we've been looking at the stock markets today because here we are. It's Wednesday the 27th, just a couple more trading days left, and again, the Dow Jones Industrials are up today, 86 points right now. NASDAQ is plus 27, and let's see, S&P 500 index is up 6 points. So I wanted to talk to my old friend, Dominic Chu. Is he on the line with us? He is not on the line with us.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Probably in the next 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. So what I wanted to talk to him about is the markets and whether or not this deal with they call it a Santa Claus rally, and what it could really mean for us coming up for the new year. And somebody else texted in and said, we also talked about how Bidenomics, they're still spinning this as being something that has been beneficial to us. Somebody texted in 3213, keep in mind that the current spin is no recession or a soft landing because the White House has nothing else to run on in 2024. It's going to be much worse than the current spin. So I wonder, what are you doing? Have you, as a red-blooded American, decided you're going to change your investments? Is there things that you are going to do differently because you're just really not sure where the markets are going right now? Would love to hear from you on the Super Text line. And this morning we do have Dominic Chu. Hiya, Dominic.
Joan, it's great to talk to you again.
It is great to talk to you. Dominic, you may have seen him on CNBC. He's the senior markets correspondent there. And I used to be able to talk to Dominic all the time at a radio station in Washington, D.C. And I thought, who's better to talk to us about what's happening with the markets right now than my old friend Dominic? Did you have a good Christmas, Dom?
Absolutely. I think my family, it's one of those situations, Joan, and I think there are probably a slate of folks and families out there who can empathize with me. I'm sad that Christmas has come and gone.
Yeah.
But there's part of me that's happy as well because it kind of feels like the hubbub is over. The kids got their presents. I still think that they're relatively happy with what happened and transpired. So the magic is still there. Now, mind you, my kids are 6 and 3, so the Santa Claus is still very much in play and everything.
Absolutely. What was the big gift this year?
So, my ironic, I don't know if it's ironic, but my 3-year-old son wanted a radio-controlled race car.
Wow.
Now, a 3-year-old, as you might imagine or maybe can't, but a 3-year-old can do quite a bit of damage with a radio-controlled race car.
Oh,
and so it already expected, the car has already sustained some, what I would characterize as cosmetic damage because it was run into the front of our house, but that's fine. The house is still okay, and so is the radio-controlled car. My daughter wanted one of those micro scooters. You know what I'm talking about? The ones, the kickboards that you can kind of go. This is the one with the 3 wheels instead of the 2, so that she can kind of still find the balance.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was like that. Those are the two kind of big things, and there was a bunch of other little stuff, stocking stuffers. Sure. But those are like the marquee items this Christmas.
Do you go crazy and have mountains for them of presents, or do you keep it kind of low key?
So it's interesting you bring that up because I've had this conversation, not just with my family, and to be fair, it's my in-law, it's the grandparents that do the damage on and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of families out there as well. I would like to try to keep these things because the older you get, the more you realize that the season is about spending time with loved ones and friends and enjoying people's company in the season and counting our blessings and everything. But, I understand that when you're a kid at that age that it's about the presents and everything else. But I've been trying to find a blend between the two, right?
Yeah.
To say that, hey, we can do this, appreciate, dinner time, hanging out with family, watching football, eating some cookies and desserts and everything else, and at the same time get the presents as well. But this was a year where I think that I cannot ever remember in my life as a child growing up getting as many Christmas gifts as our kids have received this year.
I love it.
Now, I mean, it's difficult because it doesn't resonate with me because as I've gotten older, I kind of subscribe much more to the idea that this is about the soft stuff as opposed to getting in the hard goods and everything else.
Oh yeah, you just wait as they get older and they get bigger. So do the presents, so do the price tags. Yeah, it's going to get worse. But, interesting to hear that it's the grandparents, it's the grandparents' fault. So I think just before I left Washington, D.C., I told you we were going to be grandparents for the first time. So we are. And actually, we're going to be blessed a second time next month.
Congratulations, Joan. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
That's great news.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. But I have that thing where, we set out to say, she's too young. She's 6 months. She's not even going to remember this. But I can't help myself. I cannot help myself. I get out there and I see something I want, and there's a pretty dress, and what about those cute little stockings? And you just go crazy. Dominic, wait till it happens to you.
Well, I understand, but I think that's, if you want to kind of dig, and we shouldn't do this because you could probably write a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation on this, but that kind of grandparent methodology, if you will, is part of the reason why the American economy keeps going.
Yes.
Basically what it comes, we are a nation where 70-some% by some estimates of our gross domestic product is driven by consumer spending, and I think grandparents make up a decent, notable portion of that consumer spending.
So the consumer spending is on the backs of us grandparents. I like
it. Yes, it is.
Although it should be on other things. Okay, so let's talk economics, because you tweeted this week about a Santa Claus rally purists, and I'm looking at the markets and I'm thinking everything's been up, up, up. So who are these purists? And are we really in a Santa Claus rally?
So when I talk about the Santa Claus rally purists, the reason why I bring it up is because there are certain folks on the market out there. So what the general, I'd say, cross-section of Main Street, K Street, and Wall Street public, right, has come to associate with the quote-unquote Santa Claus rally is just this idea that there's a seasonal strength, right, a seasonal tailwind to the end of the year, kind of around Thanksgiving to Christmas. It's kind of incorporates consumer spending, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all the other stuff, and just the generally positive sentiment that goes around. What I meant to say by the Santa Claus purists is because the Santa Claus rally, per se, is actually a phenomenon that gets tracked by market watchers and experts. And what it does is it takes a look at the last 5 trading days of the year and the first 2 trading days of the new year. So 7 trading sessions. And however that 7-day span goes could have an influence or it has been shown to have some kind of maybe a causal or maybe a correlative relationship with how markets perform later on down the line. And right now the markets are in a situation where, despite all of the stuff that's going on in the world geopolitically, despite all the stuff that's going on with inflation and everything else in the economy, things seem to be going generally well, or at least traders and investors are acting as though things are going to be okay. Now, history will be the judge. I don't have a crystal ball, but the people who try to use things like the Santa Claus rally as a crystal ball to predict the future are saying that things look at least a little bit brighter than some other folks out there have feared in the past. Okay.
So do you have any hard statistics on, hey, a Santa Claus rally this year and it's been a great year after, or Santa Claus rally and there's been a recession? Do you have anything?
So this is hard, right? So the reason why I say it's difficult is because we throw around the word unprecedented sometime like it's just something. But there are certain times when things are truly unprecedented. And the reason why I bring that up is because we are at the first time ever in our economy, in the U.S. economy, where we have been actively trying to basically raise interest rates in response to a decade plus of keeping interest rates near zero. Right? That big experiment in the wake of the great financial crisis back in 2008 to 2010 was to have America's central bank, in essence, flood the American economy with cash so that they would keep the economy afloat, so that there was basically an incentive. You were almost forced to want to invest, right? Because the money that you would earn in interest just by saving your money was nothing by the time it was. So you're better off spending it, or you're better off investing it, because you're not going to make anything in the bank by the time it's done.
Right.
And the reason why that's important is because that was what predicated arguably, and there's a lot of evidence to support this, so you can believe what you want to believe, but a lot of folks really do believe that that kind of monetary policy, the amount of taxpayer dollars that were pumped into the economy because of the COVID pandemic and everything else, had basically pumped up the price of not just things like real estate, oil, and other commodities, but also financial assets, and then by extension, food, fuel, everything else on top of that. So the inflation that we got, right, was due in part, or maybe even in large part, to the amount of money that was basically put into the economy for the better part of, like I said, the last decade plus.
Yeah.
You had the worst inflation in 40 years. It's showing signs of slowing now, but it did a lot of damage. So what is it about the U.S. economy in the future, or what is it about the markets that can make sure that we don't have a deep recession because of this, right? And at the same time still be able to grow things at a pace that keeps the American economy on track. Those are all the big wild cards. And again, I say unprecedented because never in history have we seen the U.S. economy do what it did in terms of, putting that much free cash into the system. And now we're trying to unwind it all, right, without having...
Well, we can unwind it all, but we still have the debt that was caused by that, and we'll be paying that off. If I'd like to think that we could pay it off, but I don't see that as ever being possible.
I mean, you're right. So, Joan, there's a huge debate, and it's one of the reasons why we're seeing kind of like the political division that we are in the halls of Congress right now, right? About the spending versus the saving versus the investing versus the programs and the entitlements and everything. All of these things are happening because there is a view that you want to try to cut that spending, right, to get the fiscal house back in order. Or there's another side that says, well, hey, you should, at these levels, try to spend more because you can't, there are folks out there who believe you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
Really?
Right?
They want to spend more?
And so, but by spending more, can you kickstart things to get the next leg of growth going, right? And those are those proponents of things like the Inflation Reduction Act and everything else. If you pour more money into it, maybe you can create industries that can power the next leg of growth. Again, I'm not being political about it, but that's the argument that people are making for why you'd want to spend more money to make money.
Yeah, I guess it's hard if somebody in your shoes not to sound political when you do make an argument or present, both sides.
Yeah, I mean, so the difficulty right now is whether or not you have a situation where the U.S. economy is or can be sustained in this level. Now, you mentioned the debt and paying it off. I mean, you're always going to be in a situation where you're using debt, but some people don't really believe that the debt that we're incurring right now is sustainable, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that that's true.
Yeah.
The one thing that's curious right now, right, about the current dynamic, we know that interest rates, benchmark U.S. government bond interest rates over the course of the last, call it 3 to 4 months, 10-year Treasury note yields, which are a benchmark for a lot of different kinds of lending activity in America.
Mortgages,
namely. 30-year fixed-rate mortgages are tied to that 10-year Treasury note, right? We saw those numbers, the yield, the interest rates, go from basically like 2.5% just a couple of years ago, right, up to 5% plus, doubling in essence in just a few years, right? And what that did was put the brakes on a lot of things that go on with regard to housing. Now, the interesting part about that is in the weeks since then, right, since the fall, we've seen interest rates fall by about a percentage plus or more. So 5% was where it was for that benchmark interest rate just back in like October. And now we're back down to below 3.89%. So despite the fiscal woes that may or may not be in play right now for the U.S. economy and the U.S. government, there are still people out there buying U.S. government debt and forcing interest rates down.
Oh, wow.
So there's almost like, I'm not saying that it's an encouraging factor, but if you're able to have interest rates lower and lower and lower, it almost acts like an incentive, if you will, to what, Joe? borrow money.
To borrow money, sure.
Because you're paying less and less interest by
Yeah.
the time it's done. So there's a weird, very, very strange dynamic in the market and the economy right now.
Okay, so I have just maybe a minute and a half left. Tell me what you're watching on the markets right now. What piques your interest?
The biggest thing right now is going to be just how far the economy has run in the course of the last 12 months. The stock market's had a banner year.
Yeah.
Much of that has been in anticipation of the Fed cutting interest rates at some point in the first, call it 6 months of the year.
No, they said they're going to do 3 next year, right?
They haven't said anything.
Okay.
Remember, the Fed, as a matter of record, has said that they want to keep rates higher for longer in order to make sure that inflation does not rear its ugly head again.
Okay.
Now, that's the message. But the markets are saying, no, the Fed's going to cut rates soon enough. And when you cut interest rates, you put more of an incentive to buy stocks, which is why the stock market has gone up in value.
I see.
It has, right? Because the lower the interest rate, the lower the money you earn in the bank, the more you're going out there to say, hey, maybe I can make more money in the stock market.
Yeah.
That's what propels things. So that's what I got my eyes on for the next year.
All right. Well, when I come back, and I'm sitting in, this week for one of the hosts, but when I come back in, if there's things that are going on, I'd like to be able to call on you again and get some of this great information that you have for us.
Listen, Joan, I relished our time talking in Washington, D.C., so please feel free to call on me whenever you need some help.
Oh, Dominic, it's so good to hear from you. Thanks for calling in today.
Thank you, Joan. Have a happy holiday season, all right?
Yep, you too. Thanks so much. That's Dominic Chu. He's the senior markets reporter for CNBC. Great guy, too. Really sweet, very nice family man. And I really respect him. So hang out here on WTN. We've got some good stuff coming up in the moments ahead. Right now, it's 12:50. 12:55, and this is the Matt Murphy Show, and I'm Joan Jones filling in this week for him. While we're talking about some economics, some news, I wanted to let you know for the ladies who are shoppers that the website, the online retailer Zulily, is shutting down. The company said that it had made what they called a difficult but necessary decision. They had to wind down the business to maximize value, and anyone with orders that have already been placed should get them, and that should be fine. The other one that shut down just recently was Jane.com. I love that website. Jane.com also shut down. Now, this is news because all of us like to shop, of course, but what's the news part about it is that these websites are closing down, and they're American companies. They're shutting down because of the better capitalized competitors like the two China-based websites, Temu and Shine. Now, if you're on Facebook, you know that every other time, you can scroll through 2 or 3 posts of people, and then the very next post is going to be one from Temu or one from Shine. And you think that you're looking at an American website, you're ordering something from an American website. You're not. These websites are Chinese-based, Temu and Shine, and Amazon also. It's an American company, but maybe most, I don't know if that's the right word, but there are so many of the items that are on Amazon that come from China, and you have to wait an extra long time for them to arrive. So these local, Zulily, I know, was from Seattle. I don't know where Jane was based in, but they're closing down in favor of these other ones, these China-based website stores that they're killing it. I mean, they have great advertisements on Facebook. Makes me want to click on them all the time, but then you realize what they are. So just a thought there. And I also wanted to let you know about something that's happening in California. And if you had any questions about why it is that so many people are moving to Tennessee from California, this will kind of give you a good idea of why it's happening. There's a new law in California that California stores that employ more than 500 people are soon going to be fined if they don't have what they call a gender-neutral toy section by January 1st. So you can have a toy section that is little boys' toys. You can have a section of the store that's based on just Barbie dolls and brat girls and all those kinds of things. But if you're going to have those, you also have to have a section of gender-neutral toys for kids 12 and under. Now, a child care item, according to the legislation, says any product that's designed or intended by the manufacturer to facilitate sleep, relaxation, or feeding of children, or to help them with sucking or teething. At that age, you have to have, you can't have a pink, what do they call them these days? The pacifiers. You can't have a pink pacifier. It has to be something that's gender neutral. Are you kidding me? It is no wonder that people from California are flocking here in droves because you can't run an operation. You can't run your business like you would a normal person. You've got to follow these crazy rules. There's a lot of crazy rules, and some of them involve climate change. And I've got a very surprising report from somebody who's very involved in the climate change movement, who's now denying it. Coming up, it's 12:59.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Israel has stepped up its ground operations in central Gaza targeting Hamas, but civilian casualties are still on the rise, and there are growing concerns that the conflict could spread in the region. ABC's Britt Clennett is in Tel Aviv.
Israel's defense minister saying the country is now under attack from 7 different fronts, including Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, and Iran. Protesters there taking to the streets after reports from state media claiming an Israeli airstrike in Syria killed a top Iranian general directly directly responsible for arming proxy groups in the region. Iranian officials vowing revenge. And US Central Command confirming Tuesday it shot down 10 more drones and 5 missiles launched by the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels.
The Michigan Supreme Court today rejecting an appeal to bar Donald Trump's name from appearing on the state's presidential ballot.
The Michigan Supreme Court on Wednesday said that they were not, quote, persuaded by the questions presented by a watchdog group, Free Speech for People. That group aimed to bar Trump from the ballot based on his activities surrounding the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Trump lauded the decision Wednesday on his social media platform and called this and several other similar ballot challenges against him, quote, a pathetic gambit. Brittany Shepard, ABC News, Washington.
The governor of Texas sent another group of asylum seekers to New York City by plane and then by bus due to weather delays. ABC's Janice Yu is in Manhattan.
This is just the latest in what has been an ongoing crisis for more than a year now for New York City. In fact, just last week alone, city officials say there were 4,000 migrants who arrived here in this city.
The secretaries of Homeland and State in Mexico today holding talks with Mexico's president on ways to curb the flow of migrants at the southern border. The TSA says it screened 14.5 million passengers from last Wednesday to Christmas Day. Those travelers now making the return trek could be impacted by a winter storm moving across the Midwest to the East Coast. You're listening to ABC News.
La, 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 la. It's 104 here. It's WTN and 99.7. And I'm Joan Jones. I'm sitting in for Matt Murphy this week. And I'm having a great time with it, too. I hear from a lot of you on the Super Talk and Super Text lines. It's 615-737-9986. So cool to hear from you. And I really love hearing from you. So please do continue to text. But I love phone calls, too, and I'm really missing them. So we're talking climate change at this moment, and I know that you've got your opinions on climate change. I'm looking right now. So what I did just now was to Google climate change to see what stories came up. You know, you hit news after you do that, and then you get all the headlines. So here's what I'm looking at, the top stories for climate change. Earth was due for another year of record warmth, but this warm? That's the New York Times. Vox has climate scientists look back on the COP28 and 2023's extreme weather events. They sound just, I mean, they're banging the alarm over and over and over again. And we all know that we probably should have been dead a long time ago from global warming, right? I mean, that's what AOC was telling us. Well, the New York Post recently posted, and everybody talked about this, humans may be fueling global warming just by breathing because exhaled human breath can contain small, elevated concentrations of methane and nitrous oxide. And they say that both of those contribute to global warming. So what's the suggestion for how to fix this? We're just going to stop breathing? Yeah. Why would you even measure that coming from humans? Humans have to breathe. So they said those who did not exhale methane in their breath still probably release the gas ion flatus. You know what that means, don't you? Yeah, burping and flatulence. So it's not just about your breathing. It's about the burping and the flatulence as well. And diet changes, they say, are unlikely to be important because they say it doesn't matter if you're a vegetarian or a meat consumer. Either way, you are gumming up the works in the atmosphere and making for really bad air for us all to breathe. Now, the New York Post editorial board kind of had fun with this. They said that it reveals that we're all climate criminals, just like how it turned out a few years ago, that we are all racist. So, all right, let's try this. We're going to talk to Wayne in Nashville. And Wayne, are you a climate criminal?
Well, probably, yeah.
Have you breathed in and out yet today?
I have been breathing all day long.
Yeah. So you're a climate criminal.
Yeah. Well, and also not only that, I'm a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a climatologist, but my job involves environmental
Okay.
aspects of things, and ESG, the environmental safety and governance,
Yes.
social governance. I do quite a bit of research into all that, and this whole global warming thing. Of course, it's a farce because the globe is going to fluctuate. And we're never going to save the planet because the planet's probably not going to be here forever anyway, because we all know that at some point all good things come to an end.
And Wayne, what did you say your job is again?
I'm an environmental. So I'm right now I'm up to my neck in doing research for just sustainability.
Okay.
Things that are going on, like how do you track your CO2 carbon footprint, by how much trash you produce a year, how much energy you use a year, how many pounds of carbon. And really the scary thing to me is not so much tracking that or trying to be a good steward of, it's not, if we can send less trash to the landfill, hey, I'm about that, If I can save some energy and keep my electric bill down, I'm about that.
Sure. And who wouldn't be, right?
Exactly. But on the other hand, when you're stipulating that you have to reduce this carbon footprint, which CO2, and anybody that knows Phil Valentine and his legacy with Al Gore knows that this carbon CO2 thing is really, it's just a made-up farce for control. But on that same note, are you familiar with carbon farming?
Carbon farming?
Yeah, carbon farming.
Okay, tell me about it.
Okay, so farmers, they're being encouraged to grow certain crops, and also the scientists have figured out how much carbon a plant can capture. So if you're growing soybeans, corn, wheat, whatever it is, they have come up with ways of saying, okay, a plant takes in this much CO2, and they capture that, and they only release a certain amount back out. And it figures out to be about 50-50, okay? So if a farmer has about let's say he has 1,000 acres, and you figure out, and I'm just throwing numbers out there because just for simplicity, but let's say that you capture 1,000 pounds of carbon per acre.
Okay.
On this crop that he's growing. Well, he can take those and turn them into, and you've probably heard the term carbon credit.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now a company that is producing carbon in their products by the process of manufacturing, they have a carbon footprint and they want to bring it down. So what they do is they go to Farmer Joe and say, hey, I'll buy your carbon credits from you because you're carbon farming, and we'll offset our carbon. So let's take it a step further. Up in Greenland, and there's several other places, they have built these big filtration systems that they suck ambient air in. They capture the carbon in it and turn it into a slurry mix.
Okay, so
the slurry that they capture, they pump it into the ground, into crevices in the ground, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,800 feet. Mm-hmm. It just depends on where the crevices are. Over a period of about 3 to 5 years, this stuff solidifies, and it turns basically into rock.
Sure.
So they're capturing carbon, and they're putting it into the ground.
Now,
the oil companies, your oil companies that are refineries, well, they're doing the same thing, because they say, hey, they're using the offsets of the carbon they capture in the refining process to count against the products that they're producing, so that they lower their CO2 output and they don't get charged.
So that's the economics of it, Wayne. I want to ask you a question, though, because you being a researcher like you are, you probably know who Dr. William Happer is.
I've heard the name.
Okay. He's an American physicist. He's the professor in the Department of Physics at Princeton University, and he worked for the Trump administration on its goals, on its quest to find out about carbon dioxide, excuse me, and what and the lack of it that we're experiencing now because of all the efforts to curb our carbon dioxide output. What it's having, the effect that it's having on our Earth. And here's what he had to say. I want you to listen to this.
Okay.
Many people have stopped believing in traditional religions, so they don't believe in God, but they need something beyond themselves to believe in. And so, what could be more noble than saving the planet? The planet is threatened by the demon gas CO2, so we're going to save it. The fact that it means essentially suicide for the human race, that doesn't, get into their brains, but that's what it means. You can't immediately eliminate CO2 and let the human population survive. It can't be done. So it's a suicide pact, what is being proposed.
Yeah, he said carbon dioxide is what drives life on Earth. The growth of plants depends on carbon dioxide. So it needs to be in the air so that the leaves can take it in. They take it in small holes in the plants. And you combine it with water and energy, which comes from sun. And the combination of that is what makes our plants thrive, and that's how we can feed people on this earth. So this effort to eliminate carbon dioxide is actually what's going to lead to the destruction of humanity, is his point.
And I absolutely agree. And after listening to that, I know exactly who he is, because I've listened to some of his other releases and other statements. But the nuttiness, the craziness of this whole thing is to think that as humans that we could actually affect the environment by what we do in that aspect. I understand pollution. I mean, look at smog. Smog has toxins in it. It's got poison in it.
Yeah.
CO2 is not a toxin. It's naturally occurring, and anything that's carbon-based, and that's virtually everything that we see. I'm sitting here looking at trees right now. They're carbon-based.
Sure.
If I cut the tree down and burn it, it's going to change form, but it's not going to change what the molecular content of it is, because you'll still be able to find the carbon that was in that tree. It still exists.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'll give you an example. I operated what was called a HAP site with a company a HAP site.
Okay.
Which is it's a testing device. They use them in laboratories and stuff. They use them in forensics, like the fire academy or the fire forensic fire marshals and stuff. What it is, it's a mass spectrometry kind of device. And it's got a tube in it that's heated at certain degrees. So anything that you sample, you draw an air sample into it. As that sample is heated up, each one of the elements is going to drop off or going to stick to that tube at a certain place, because each element has a point at temperature that it volatilizes at. Okay, so this machine will tell you what those elements are. So, for example, we took the sampler and we held it up to the input where you put your gas in your car. Okay, we took the gas knob off. We kind of waved the wand right in front of it where it was drawing in an air sample, and within a couple of minutes, we had a reading, and it showed over 86 different chemical compounds in the gasoline, in the fumes that were coming out of the port to put the gas in. So then we cranked up the vehicle, and we took and waved the wand near the exhaust to be able to draw in a sample of the exhaust. We came up with the exact same 86 chemical compounds.
Wow.
So what people don't understand about science is science. Everything else that they try to throw in there and mix it up, like we can do away with oil. The International Trade Union over in Switzerland, I've been there. I listened to a lady talk about how in 2040 they want to be completely and absolutely dirty energy free.
Dirty energy free, which is what's going to end. It goes back to if you do that and you eliminate the CO2, what are we going to? The plants need this in order for them to grow and to feed us. Yeah. Wayne, I have enjoyed our conversation very much. I thank you. I do want to take one more call before we have to break here. So thanks for calling in. And please do so again. Kevin is in Nashville, and you have a comment about climate change as well. What's on your mind, Kevin?
Yeah, well, part of it, I was going to say the same thing about the plants, because all plants need it.
Sure.
They need it to survive. But then apart from that, Al Gore wrote his book about 22 years ago and all these dire predictions that he had.
Yeah.
Here we are 22 years later, not one of them has come true. And he doesn't live like he actually believes what he's saying, and neither does John Kerry, and most of them don't. They fly to these places like COP 2022 or whatever it was, and they're flying to these places using jets and everything else.
And they don't fly together to save any gas. They fly in separate planes.
Because they don't believe it, because that's not what it's about.
That's right.
It's about trying to control people. And eventually this is where the whole smart cities and electric cars thing is going to come into play.
Let me ask you a question. When you're talking about smart cars and you're talking about an electric car that gets plugged in to get its charge, where is it that the electricity comes from to charge that car?
Coal-fired plants.
Absolutely.
But even on that one, MIT did a study just a couple of years ago. The amount of rare earth minerals that you have to mine to make one car battery, because lithium and some of the other ones are just in such minute quantities, you have to mine 500,000 tons of material to make one battery. That's not very cost effective.
It is not cost effective. And what are they doing to the earth in order to get to those minerals?
Exactly. And then the other thing with that is, and here's how stupid we are, Afghanistan was loaded with those materials. After we bugged out of Afghanistan, China went right in there, and they started inking deals to the tune of trillions of dollars.
I love how you said bugged out of there, like it wasn't a mess. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
To mine those rare earth minerals that we're going to be, some people in this country are going to be stupid enough to buy. And then you buy these electric cars, and like Brian had reported before, that people buying electric cars, that is slowed down because the ones that want them have already got them, but nobody wants to pay the high price tag.
That's right.
To buy the car and to maintain the car, especially to change the battery.
That's right. And Kevin, here's another thing. For people like me, and I appreciate your call. Thank you so much. For people like me, we have a big honking truck. It's enormous and it eats a lot of gas. But what does it do? Well, it carries around our RV. And I just can't imagine for 1 second having a truck that's relying on electricity to get me through to the next camping site in the middle. When you're driving and you're camping and you've got all your kids with you and you've got millions of things in the back of the truck, A, it weighs a lot, and B, it's probably using more electricity. I don't know how that works, but you're not relying on being able to find a place to plug in your truck with your camper on the back in order to be able to continue traveling. It doesn't work. It doesn't work now. It's not going to work. And they really have to stop this push. I've got more on this in the moments ahead. Hope you stick around here at WTN. It's now 1:20. Hey, y'all. It's 1:23 here on the Matt Murphy Show, and I'm Joan Jones. Again, the talk line, 615-737-9986. A bunch of people texted in. They were talking about these coal-fired plants, and let's see. Mark says that also with coal-fired plants, people don't realize that 20 years ago or even 30 years ago in the 70s, they made this big push for cleaner coal plants, and they installed these scrubbers that actually scrub the air as it's being let out of the stack. So the climate, he calls them the climate idiots who think that CO2 air is what feeds the plants. I'm not sure what that means, but anyway, the air that comes out of the plants is already cleaner. Now, we're doing that in an effort to keep our air clean, but China is building new plants every week, and they're not using the scrubbers. They're not using the standards that we use here in the United States in order for things to be cleaner. Now, back to the stories about these, we did a little bit here from Dr. William Happer. He's an American physicist, but also Dr. Patrick Moore, and you may know his name. You actually would probably know better what he's done. He's an environmentalist. He calls himself a climate change realist, and he was the co-founder of Greenpeace. Now, he started Greenpeace, but he left after 15 years because the organization, he said, was being hijacked by the political left.
So, it was really a shame when Greenpeace went bad, largely because it was hijacked by the political left, because they saw the money and the political power that we'd created. We weren't political particularly. I've never been political. I've avoided it like the plague because I believe that we should just judge every situation on its merit and not just say, I'm a Republican, so I support this, that, and the other thing, or I'm a Democrat and I support this, that, or the other thing. It doesn't make sense to me. I understand that it's legitimate to have political parties. I just don't want to be in one.
Well, and he is not in a political party, and he's also not with Greenpeace anymore. He left the movement, And he says it was a conversation that he had with a Biz News. I don't know if you follow that site, but he said the number of people who have been killed by extreme weather has actually gone down by 98% in the last 100 years.
It's been proven that this is the case. And most people who died from weather in those days was by starvation, because what the weather did to their crops. It's unbelievable how much less danger there is for people today than there was just 100 years ago. Much less danger. And a lot of it is because of fossil fuels and nitrogen fertilizer. People, it's only 100 years they have to look at there, and to see that there's definite proof that on a per capita basis, there's been a 98% reduction in death from extreme weather. And that includes all extreme weather of every kind. It's just been published, and it is not being carried by the mainstream media. They should have this as their top story.
They should have this as their top story. But again, that's that thing that I talked about the other day, yesterday, actually, the sin of omission. Dr. Patrick Moore there, who had been a co-founder of Greenpeace, talking about how, deaths are down by 98%. And you don't have to look very far. You just have to look at the past 100 years. David in McMinnville, have you looked in the past 100 years? And are you a victim of extreme weather?
Oh, no, not extreme weather, and I've been around for a lot of them 100 years, let me tell you. Something else about your deal that nobody's telling. I'm going to ask you a question, kind of think about it a second, and I'll give you the answer.
Okay.
How do you feel about your nice super highways and interstate and bridges and nice new fancy design buildings they could never build before?
How do I feel about them? I like them. I like the roads and I like the buildings.
Okay. Well, here's a little secret. I was a truck driver hauling powdered concrete. I also hauled what they call fly ash. That's what they take out of the stacks on the factories. That fly ash literally can make concrete react like steel, and that's the reason we've got modern highways that last and are strong, not counting buildings and many, many other things it's used for. It is something that's not told. And without it, we ain't going to have the kind of infrastructure and roads that we have now. I can tell you that one. And carbon, I don't know. I think these guys are off the road, and we need to slap them and see if they're awake. Other than that, have a fine day. Nice talking to you, and have a good one.
David, thanks for calling in. I would like to slap him. I'd be okay with that. There was one more quote here from Dr. Patrick Moore, the co-founder of Greenpeace, that I wanted to bring to you. And he talked about forest fires. And you hear about it in the West all the time, and the media is always blaming it on climate change. They actually blame climate change and the fact that an electric pulse has brought down wires in a forest. But this Dr. Patrick Moore says all of that is false. It's fake news, and we're being fed it every day.
There is no evidence of a climate catastrophe. All they're talking about now is extreme weather events, which have been going on since the beginning of time. And forest fires, for goodness sakes. Most forest fires are caused by people carelessly failing to put out campfires and throwing cigarette butts out the window and that sort of thing is a lot of them. But lightning has been here forever, right? And lightning causes forest fires. But the reasons that these fires are so severe today is due to mismanagement.
Yes, mismanagement. I've been saying this for forever. Gavin Newsom does not take care of the forest in California. If they've got a whole lot of the brush and the fallen trees at the bottom of the forest, then when somebody flicks a cigarette out of their window and it begins a fire, it goes to the top of the trees, and that's how it spreads a wildfire. And he doesn't care. He doesn't care because he gets to say that it's because of climate change that these things are happening. And what does the media do? They parrot that opinion, that fake news opinion. And that's what we're fed day in and day out in the media. It's frustrating as all heck. We've got more coming up. And what I want to talk about in the moments ahead here on WTN is hope, because we're staring down all these things and there just needs to be a sliver of hope in our lives to make us want to go into 2024. And we'll take a look at that coming up in the moments ahead. 1:30 here, Super Talk 99.7. $1:34, and I'm Joan Jones. I'm sitting in for Matt Murphy here this week on WTN. And by the way, he will be here at 3 o'clock this afternoon. And then you can catch him all next week at his regular time from 12 to 3, which is what I'm sitting on here now. I want to read just some of the text messages that come in. I love this. I love interacting with you. Somebody, who is this? 1509. Wow, Joan, you keep on preaching it. It's so refreshing to hear from you on these airways. I just love that. Thank you. John says that most wildfires are natural and needed to clear out the dead underbrush. That's so true. It's so important. More importantly, it causes renewal and healthy forests. Unwisely, people have decided to live in or to live close to the dangerous areas, and that's what causes the loss of life and the things that are happening that you hear about on the radio and on the TV all the time. And somebody else sent me some pictures about the visiting the Waco Mammoth National Monument this year, and they explained scientists at Baylor University found the temperatures are only about 10 degrees warmer now than when mammoths were in Waco. Boy, that certainly is amazing that it's really not that different. Thank you for having these discussions with us here. You know, I wanted to talk about hope. I do have a guest who I want to talk about that hope with, and I still haven't heard from him yet, so I want to save it.
She's tracking him down.
She's tracking him down. All right. So let's do this. There are some new laws that are going on the books in the coming new year, and they're here in Tennessee, and I wanted to tell you about them because I don't know if we've talked about this very much, but when you go to the Tennessee Department of Safety and you take a handgun safety course, you have to pay for it. Well, there's a new law in Tennessee that beginning in January, it says the Tennessee Department of Safety is going to reimburse people $30 per individual if you take this approved handgun safety course. And it also says that it directs licensed federal firearms dealers to display signage that advertises that reimbursement. So a handgun purchase, by the way, is not required for you to receive the safety course. You can just take it without actually having to take another course. There's also the Tennessee Paid Family Leave Insurance Act that's coming up here in January 1st, it'll take effect. It was signed into law last March. It's going to go into effect on the 1st. And it says that it amends the current code to allow insurance companies to offer paid family leave. Employers could then purchase for their employees. So the insurance is voluntary. The new law doesn't guarantee paid family leave for any Tennesseans, but it does allow for that to take place. So the sponsors of the legislation argued that paid family leave insurance could offset the cost for employers. The law applies to an insurance policy for benefit programs that pay all or some of the cost related to, and so you can use it for the birth or the adoption of a child by the employer, for the placement of a child with the employee for foster care, also for the care of a family member or an employee who has a serious health condition. And you can also use it if the status of a family member of the employee who's a service member on active duty has been notified of an impending call or an order to active duty. So really, it's just going to, this Paid Family Leave Insurance Act is going to go a long way to help some Tennessee families. 138 here. What do you say, Belle? Do we have them? We have them. All right. It is 1:38, and on the line is Pastor Alan Jackson. He is the pastor of World Outreach Church, which is the church that I go to. And I learned this week, actually last week, that Chris Hand also attends that church. But it's such a big darn church that I've never run into him there. Alan Jackson, welcome to WTN. Good to have you on the show with us.
Good afternoon, Joan. It's good to be with you. Sorry I'm late.
Quite all right. You're forgiven because that's what we're supposed to do, right?
Thank you.
That's right.
I believe in mercy.
That's right. So, Pastor Jackson, this is the day that that there's a U.S. delegation that's going to include the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. He's meeting with Mexico's president. And what they're going to talk about is this crisis at the southwestern border. It's continuing to rage on. It's a crisis that, as American citizens, we feel pretty hamstrung by it. It feels like there's absolutely nothing that we can do. Our borders are being breached by people that we haven't vetted. We learned today that many of them don't have their vaccinations. We don't know what their intentions are. And we're only hearing, of course, about the ones that get caught or turn themselves in. Many of them do. But what about all those people who cross the border and they never get caught? And it's something that we talk about, we think about a lot. And it's an issue that is roiling this country. And it got the attention of you last week, and I wanted to play a little piece about what you had said in church. You're not shy about calling attention out to what's happening in this country.
You may not have read it lately, but the preamble of our Constitution charges the federal government with the responsibility to provide for the common defense. It's in print. That's their job. Yet we have open borders today. We are witnesses to an invasion Well, we've been told it was humanitarian. It was just people from some neighboring places that were seeking asylum. But today we have hundreds of thousands of persons each month pouring into our country from more than 160 nations. That's not a humanitarian effort. It's something else. And then to compound the refusal to defend our nation from an invasion, we incentivize it by extending free health care and education and a whole menu of civil services.
Yeah, you nailed it there. It's exactly what people are feeling. And one of the things that you said in there was that's not a humanitarian effort. That's something else. What else is it?
Well, I think the underlying question by that is what's the objective? Why is it happening?
Correct, yes.
And I'm not certain I have the wisdom to answer that. I mean, I think you could argue it's clearly changing the demographic composition of our nation. Maybe that impacts how we vote or how votes, particularly if you decide to give people who are here illegally permission to vote, you would think they would be favorably disposed towards the people who created the open border. But I prefer not to think that our leaders are that self-absorbed that they would refuse their fundamental assignment to protect us in order to consolidate their power for a foreseeable future. But I can tell you this, it's very destructive. We're already bankrupt. We're more than $33 trillion in debt. And we're making financial commitments now to millions and millions of new citizens. The burden for that is going to come from the people who are already in the working population.
Yeah.
It's just a formula to compound the downward spiral that we're in. I'm happy if we want to revisit immigration and decide that we want to change immigration, let's do that. But let's do it in an orderly, purposeful way. I heard someone say last week that this was no different than Ellis Island, and I was screaming at my radio. Because, Ellis Island was done with meticulous records in a very intentional way. We are a nation of immigrants. We've come from the nations of the world. I'm 100% in favor of immigration. But I think we have to do it in an orderly way, or we're no longer a sovereign nation. You cannot have open borders and imagine that we will maintain our sovereignty as a nation. The two open borders and sovereign nations don't go together.
That's correct. One of the things that you also spoke about, I think in the past week, you said that, sure, we may feel the anger and the hostility about what our government is doing and what their actions have been, or arguably their inaction. But that's where the anger should stop. And it shouldn't spill out onto the people that are coming into our land. How do we deal with that? How do we separate the two and justly and rightly handle the people that are coming into the country?
Well, I agree and I disagree. I think, first of all, I should say I don't think this is a Republican or Democrat issue, because I don't think either party's had the courage to address it. So I don't want the listeners to think that I'm talking about some political party. Mm-hmm. But I'm also not quite as compassionate for the people coming across the border. Illegal means illegal. Words have meanings. If you go to the bank and you make an illegal withdrawal, there are consequences for that. If you go to the drugstore and you take things illegally, although our attitude towards shoplifting seems to be changing, we still understand the difference between paying for something and stealing something. And people that are coming across our border that are not fleeing immediate persecution, just because the standard of living in the nation where they lived is lower than the standard of living in the United States, that is not adequate reason to seek asylum. I have traveled the world a bit, and the United States is unique. Our standard of living, the liberties we have, the freedoms we have, the access to health care, the education we have, those are not globally experienced in the way that we know them. They're simply not. I have friends in other nations that said if we could just give shoes to the children in our nation, we would change the quality of life.
Yeah.
And so the economic conditions alone are not an adequate excuse to say that people are seeking asylum. And so I think we're going to have more courage, make it personal, take it out of the national consequence and say, just open the doors of your home and say anybody whose income is less than yours can come take whatever they want. That's basically what we're doing on a national level. And that isn't this. You can call that an expression of compassion if you don't consider the impact it has on your children and your grandchildren. And we need to consider the impact this is going to have on the generations that are following us.
And it's not that it's a voluntary effort. We're being forced to do what we're doing. Our taxpayer dollars are flowing into this effort to provide health care, school, vaccinations, everything for people who came into this country illegally, while others are standing in line and doing what they should have been doing, which is taking the courses and waiting the time and becoming naturalized citizens.
Well, I have friends and acquaintances and people that I'm engaged with that are in nations like Armenia or the Philippines that would desperately like to gain U.S. citizenship. But the process for doing that takes several years and thousands of dollars. I know because I've helped sponsor several people.
Mm.
You know, and the alternative is say, well, let me get you a ticket to Mexico and you can come
Yes.
across the border.
You can come across the
But
border.
we don't want to participate in that illegal activity, so we haven't resorted to that yet.
Yeah.
Again, we've got to stop thinking of this in just humanitarian terms.
You're right. I have another soundbite that I want to play for you. And I was there on this day when you said this, and the reaction from the church says everything.
We're not content any longer just to murder our children before they're born. Now we're trying to get federal support to mutilate them. And we would prefer to do it, apparently, without even parental permission. Do you understand how evil that is? And then anybody that would advocate for that, support that, protect that, excuse that, should not be providing leadership at any level.
Now, I'm going to bring down the level of the applause here, but the applause went on and on and on. And people stood up, and it went on and on and on. This was something that really hit a nerve for people within the church. We also had a big discussion about it in our family after that. I think that nerve gets hit when we're talking about our kids. What do you think about that moment?
Well, the topic was gender modification surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think to do that to minor children is abuse. That's a time in your life. Adolescence is a time in your life where you are anything but certain about anything. And to perform life-altering procedures, either surgically or chemically, upon those young people is heinous. It's evil. And to create a culture that champions that and underscores that and highlights that, we really have to take a minute and do some very difficult self-reflection, particularly for those agencies in our culture that we think of as providing some moral boundaries or moral insight, which would include not just our churches, but our schools and our universities and the leadership, those people providing leadership. And at the moment, what we're encouraging, it's just almost impossible to believe. I'm grateful to COVID for that. It pulled the curtain back on much of that. I didn't know Vanderbilt had been providing gender modification surgeries until all the COVID stuff started coming out and the curtain got pulled back on that. But it's not limited to Vandy.
Right.
It's happening across our culture.
I like, and a lot of the listeners that are texting in this morning, or this afternoon, are saying that they like what they're hearing from me because you're not wishy-washy, you're not lukewarm, and that's what you're called to do. So many of these political issues, so many of these cultural issues are just raining down on us. It's become very heavy. So what we wanted to look forward to at this moment is, what are you hoping for? How do we provide hope for 2024?
That's a really good question. And I think I'd want all the listeners to understand we're not powerless. What I think we have to begin is at our kitchen table. What happens in my house is more important than what happens in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And if we will all take that attitude and come back, I'm an advocate for a biblical worldview, for a Judeo-Christian worldview. If we'll come back and have the courage to bring those principles to bear in our homes, around our kitchen tables, now that will take courage because it's countercultural right now. But if we'll come back and begin to do the advocacy for that and then expand that into our circle of friends, the people that we gather with our discretionary time, or when we go to the ball fields to watch our children and our grandchildren play. If they don't have a prayer on the ball field before the game starts, have one in the stands.
Mm-hmm.
It's only you and the person that you're there watching the game with, let it start with that. But let's stop pretending we're victims, and let's start standing up for what we know is right and wrong. You know, the issues that are tearing our culture apart are really not complicated. If you have a biblical worldview, God created as male and female. Marriage was God's idea long before it was any government's idea. And let's come back to those fundamental principles and begin to be advocates for that. I don't believe that's being political at all. I think it's having the courage to bring the moral implications of our biblical worldview to bear on the culture in which we live. That has always been a challenge in the church. It's not a 21st century problem. You know, probably the most glaring example of that in history was the church in Germany and in Europe during World War II and their failure to stand up for the Jewish people. Exactly. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the confessing church, the failure of the general church population. But it's wrong to think of that as a European or historical problem. For the last several decades, we've watched the American church remain almost totally silent while 60 million children lost their lives. And the general answer was, well, it's the law of the land. Well, that was a very poor excuse to cover our ambivalence. And now it's not the law of the land. And the loudest voices we hear are the voices that are in favor of abortion, not the ones saying that the sanctity of human life should be protected. But if you don't like the abortion discussion, you can step back a few more decades to the civil rights issue. The church was woefully silent while racism flourished in this nation. We even broke our denominations up around labels on that.
Yeah.
And there was a relatively small group of people that used their voice. And there was a clear biblical mandate to let us know that every human being is sacred in God's sight. There's a dignity in every human being, regardless of your race.
So
Now
in
we're
these
flipping
these discussions begin around the kitchen table, like you just said, and they're things that we should be talking about with our families. I have a hard break here. I've got to go, but I do appreciate hearing from you and I have more about your message of hope. I'm going to read your devotional from today, which I just love, as another way of bringing hope for 2024. Pastor Alan Jackson from World Outreach Church, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Joan.
All right, take care. It's 1:52. Well, hello there. It's 155 WTN. It's 99.7. Joan Jones here, filling in for Matt Murphy. And we just had an incredible segment, I think, about hope in 2024. And I want to follow up on that just a little bit because we mentioned Dietrich Bonhoeffer. There's a book out from Eric Metaxas. It's called Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Martyr, Prophet, Spy. And it's his life. He was from Germany, and it's his life as it led up to he was in Germany at the time that Adolf Hitler came to power, and he was actually killed by Adolf Hitler. And his story is just incredible. And it's really a story about how humanity turned a blind eye, and especially humanity within the churches. And so it's incredible stuff. It's a great read. It's a long read, but it's a really good read. But I also wanted to, I want to hear from you about how you plan to have hope in 2024, because it's not easy right now. I mean, honestly, somebody else also said that there's a movie that's coming out now about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, something I would definitely watch. And there were a lot of other people who texted in and said, Alan Jackson is our pastor too. He really is. He's really good about providing the things that you need to do. It's not just, we preach this, we teach this. It's about action. How do you take action? And, he talked there about going to the kitchen table and talking to your family about it. And then from your family, span out to your friends and span out to, when you're at a baseball game and what you do in order to spread hope. One of the other things, he's got this incredible devotional. I get it every day in my mailbox, in my email box. And he's talked today, and I thought this was just incredible, about the heaviness in our lives by the things that we're hearing and watching on television all the time. One of the things he suggests doing is creating a couple of good news lists. Now listen to this. He says you'll want one list to include all the victories and breakthroughs related to people and situations that you know personally. And that would include your family, your friends, your coworkers, and your community. So make a list. And this is something you would keep in maybe a diary or, a journal that you can keep by your bedside, and maybe look at it after you've done this, after you've already done this, when you go ahead and include the victories and breakthroughs related to the people and situations you know personally. That's one list. Then the other list would be everything outside of that circle. And he says, make a note of when truth is revealed in the public square, when persecuted believers are delivered from oppression, when a ministry delivers food to people after a natural disaster. And we've seen a lot of that here after the tornadoes that move through. He said, in a time when deception is rampant and many find it inconvenient to acknowledge God, it's important to be aware and recognize what God is doing. And the only way to do that is to keep track, because otherwise you're going to be listening day in and day out to the stuff that you're hearing on the radio, to the stuff that you're seeing on television. And it pervades, it invades your senses. You need to be able to move beyond that and make the list of things that have been good in your life, and keep that list. Make sure that you've got it by the bedside and you're looking at it all the time to remember what it is that's gone right. Because if you can remember what's gone right today, and tomorrow you're having an awful day, but you pick up that book and you look at it and you're saying, well, yesterday, my mom got a good report on her eyesight. This is me. So my mom has macular degeneration and a couple of other things going on, but she has been able to do well getting her treatments. And so I would add that to the good side of the ledger when I'm keeping my journal, something that I think we should all be doing so that we can keep track and remember that things can be good. More to come here on WTN. It's 2:00.
2 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories right now in Nashville. Mostly sunny, 61 degrees. Possible chance for rain later tonight, which, depending on how cold it is this evening, could become snow. We got a weather forecast coming up. Michigan's Supreme Court today rejected an appeal to bar former President Donald Trump from the state's 2024 primary ballot for his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. The court said they did not believe the question should be reviewed by their court. This comes days after Colorado's Supreme Court decided to disqualify Trump from their primary. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Whether the 14th Amendment applies to our modern day politics and specifically January 6th, the question is, should former President Trump be disqualified for engaging in insurrection after he previously took an oath to defend the Constitution? And the Michigan court didn't even hear the challenge to a lower court decision, which said this is a political question, not one for judicial review. And so the Michigan Supreme Court seemed to think that's the right answer.
And Trump came out on Truth Social celebrating this decision, saying it's a desperate gambit by the Democrats, and it's likely the U.S. Supreme Court will be the ones making the ultimate decision. Crime in Tennessee. An Oklahoma man was arrested last night for allegedly making a violent threat against TriStar Hendersonville Medical Center. Officials said it was a threatening message that included odd comments and frustrations from the caller. Police realized through investigation that 45-year-old Kyle Andrew Odell was the culprit and that he had used the same phone to call an Oklahoma hospital prior to this. He'll be held as a fugitive from justice pending extradition to Sumner County. And that is the latest news. Full weather forecast next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
.204 and Joan Jones here sitting in for Matt Murphy on this Wednesday. It's Wednesday, right? It's the 27th of December. What a day we're having here on WTN. Really love this. It's 2:04 right now. And let me give you the numbers. Love to hear from you. 615-737-9986. Got a lot of lines open right now, and we also have plenty of space on the text line if you want to call in and have something to say on the text line as well. I do want to revisit the issue of what you're doing in 2024 to make sure that you have hope, to make sure that your new year is not going to be saddled by all the bad news that you get every day from mainstream media. And so it's very interesting to me. I love these stories, and I love that we can help each other in this way. So please do. Text, call, do whatever you'd like. I'd love to hear from you. 205 now. Well, you may never heard of this guy. His name is Tariq Johnson. His title is former Lieutenant Tariq Johnson with the U.S. Capitol Police. Now, he says that the new chief of police of the Capitol Police, his name is Tom Manger, whom he calls the most corrupt politician in the country, has mismanaged overtime for his officers. And now he's furloughing officers in order to counter the negative impact of what's happening for Capitol Police.
As we get close to the end of the year, we again face the issue that some of our sworn employees are bumping up against the maximum allowable pay rate for any USCP employee. This is a problem caused by the fact that our staffing is still not what it needs to be.
It's not what it needs to be. That's the Capitol Police Chief Tom Manger there. And this is from a video that Tariq Johnson put on Twitter. So it's open for anyone to access and to listen to as well. Now, the video is Chief Manger. He's outlining his strategy for the upcoming new year. And he said that what he's saying here is that they need more money and more officers. Isn't it funny how money seems to solve everything? So to make his point, he has to furlough some of the officers, and he's doing it at Christmas time.
The good news is that we are all making progress. We have more sworn employees today than ever before, but it's still not enough.
So hang on a second. We have more sworn employees. That's what he said, right?
The good news is that we are all making progress. We have more sworn employees today than ever before, but it's still not enough.
It's still not enough. They have more officers on their force, the U.S. Capitol Police, than ever before, but it's not enough. However, how often have we heard that local police departments can't get enough officers because of the rot from the left demanding to defund police? Because of Soros-tainted attorneys general who demand no bail and the release of criminals onto the streets, who just go on to commit more crimes and overwhelm police efforts to tamp down crime. And those same attorneys general always turn around and charge the police officers with abuse and murder when they defend themselves or others from murderous, drug-addled zombies that have been released onto the streets. But I digress. Back to the issue of furloughing these officers right at the holidays. Chief Manger actually poked the bear in this video that was posted by Tariq Johnson. He poked the bear by calling out the officers because they're not happy with being sidelined.
While it's easy for some folks to sit on the sidelines and complain, it's much harder working through a complicated process to ensure that each of you are treated fairly.
Yeah, well, that's an absolute insult. And he's the one that put the officers on the sidelines. He's the one that did that during the Christmas holiday. Now, I get it. The reason he's doing it is because they've worked so much overtime that they've had to pay them overtime hours, and they hit a level. I don't know what the ceiling is, but there's a level at which they say, well, these guys can't earn any more. And it is a safety valve. It stops them from just racking up so much time and so much money and causing corruption. I get that. But he's asking for even more money for a police force that, A, has many more police officers sworn, he called them sworn employees, than they've ever had in their life, in the life of the Capitol Police. But it's not just that. In Washington, D.C., where the Capitol Police, you would imagine they would be, right? In Washington, D.C., there are so many different police forces. There's a police force for everything that you can imagine. I'm going to click here just to be able to give you an idea of exactly how many there are. There's the United States Marshal Service, the Park Police. There's actually Mint Police. They protect the U.S. Mint. The Capitol Police, there's the Metropolitan Police Department. There is, of course, the Secret Service. There's the District of Columbia Protective Services Division, and the list goes on and on and on. So Chief Manger wants to increase the size of this police force that is already in a city with so much police force that it's incredible that you can't swing a cat. I know I used this yesterday. You can't swing a cat in Washington, D.C. without hitting an officer of some sort. Now, Tariq Johnson says Chief Manger is arguably the most corrupt politician in the country, and he said that Manger is leading the biggest cover-up in the country he's ever seen by making sure that January 6th is framed as an insurrection. You can't say that it's a riot. You have to say that it's an insurrection. And I witnessed this when I was on a radio station in Washington, D.C., if ever the word riot was written into the newscast, oftentimes the person that was on the air would change that word riot to the word insurrection, intentionally ignoring the copy that was on the screen. They would change it to the word insurrection. Well, I didn't understand maybe at the time why it was so important to have that word insurrection used so dramatically, so overwhelmingly, and to every day have to hit a January 6th story. We had to hit a story every single day in at least 2 news parts. There had to be a story for the past 3 years about January 6th. Well, we know why now it's so important, right? Because when you call it an insurrection, even if the person that they're talking about, and we're talking about former President Donald Trump, even though he's never been charged, he's never been convicted of the charge of insurrection, calling it an insurrection ensures that the Colorado Supreme Court can say he's an insurrectionist, and we can kick him off the ballot using insurrection as an excuse. Now, Tariq says that the Capitol Police Chief, Tom Manger, has been fighting for years to keep January 6th, the video footage, from being released. And he has worked to discredit whistleblowers and has strategically selected certain employees within the department to go testify in those J6 prosecutions. So the most corrupt police officer in the nation, as we're being told here by Tariq Johnson, is making a move now to increase the size of his already outsized police force. I'll tell you how he's doing that. And why is he doing it? Well, because it's not going to stay at the capital of the United States in Washington, D.C. This police force is called Capitol Police, but they don't stay within the confines of the capital of the United States in Washington, D.C. And I want to remind you that in Washington, D.C., crime is at an all-time high. Carjackings by teenagers is so out of control that even the mayor of Washington, D.C. encourages people to use electronic tagging devices in their cars to keep track of where your car ends up after it's taken from you. That's how much confidence she has that your car is going to be stolen in a carjacking. Chief Manger wants Capitol Police everywhere you go in the United States. And already he's planted field offices. Now in Tampa, Florida, and in San Francisco, California, those places that seem pretty far away from Washington, D.C., where the capital is, that the Capitol Police should be protecting. Factcheck.org says, and clearly FactCheck is not a right-leaning organization. I think we can all agree on that. But now you've got field offices planted in Tampa, Florida, and in San Francisco, California. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that there is a push to expand police powers? And I want you to tell me what you think on the talk line right now, 615-737-9986. Why this push to expand police powers? Now, some Republicans have criticized the move as a federal overreach or partisan power plays to target January 6th Capitol protesters. And I know I hit on this January 6th issue yesterday. I'm hot on this because I'm so angry that so many people are still in jail and they haven't even had they've been charged with misdemeanors and they haven't even had their day in court, but they're still being kept in prison. Now, Congressman Matt Gaetz at a rally in Florida this past summer said, "What in the hell is the Capitol Police doing setting up an office in Tampa, Florida?" Well, I think we all want to know that, right? Capitol Police say that they're opening these new offices to investigate threats to members of Congress. Now, we talked about some of the threats from members of Congress yesterday. One of them was Marjorie Taylor Greene, whose home is just outside Atlanta in Georgia. She lives in Rome, Georgia. And so often, 8 times in the past year, people have swatted her home. So they've called up the police and they said, I'm inside Marjorie Taylor Greene's home and she's killing people. And it's how swatting is done. I don't know that that's how it was done in this incident, but it sends police to her home, guns drawn, to make sure that nobody else is going to get killed. And these type of swatting incidents have ended up in terrible situations with people actually being killed because police were sent to their home, not because there was actually anything going on at their home. Now, there's also the congressman in New York who reported on Christmas Day during celebrations in his home that they were broken up by the sound of police banging down their door because he was also swatted. So are they talking about investigating threats to members of Congress like that? Well, they didn't put it in Rome, Georgia, and they certainly didn't put it in New York. Capitol Police have placed these field offices in Tampa, Florida, and in San Francisco. Now, Capitol Police have already announced that they're branching out from the Capitol. And in their words, the announcement said to pivot toward an intelligence-based protective agency. That's never been the goal of Capitol Police. The goal of Capitol Police has been protecting the Capitol. But now the pivot is going to be toward an intelligence-based protective agency. That's a whole lot different than what their original goal was of protecting the Capitol of the United States. Tampa and San Francisco, they said, were chosen as the first field offices because those 2 states are where we're getting a big bulk of the threats, they said. Well, here's another issue. There's a new trend, I guess, of Democratic congressmen looking for extra protection. And sometimes these Democratic congressmen have been the ones who have said, hey, we've got to defund the police. And here's from Town Hall. This guy, I don't know why I didn't put this guy's first name in. Greg Casar. He had been a city council member in Austin, Texas. And at the time that he was a city council member, he voted in favor of defunding the Austin Police Department. Well, now he's now a congressman for Austin, in the area in Austin, Texas. And he said he feels threatened by people on the right. So he made sure he contacted U.S. Capitol Police. And Town Hall says that Capitol Police have been asked to work with the Austin Police Department to provide him extra security outside of his home. This is a man who voted in favor of defunding the Austin Police. He didn't want Austin Police around when he was a city council member, but now that he's a congressman, it seems very important to him that he forced the Austin Police Department that he wanted to defend to come outside of his home and protect him. Now, the Police Retired Officers Association, they managed to get on Twitter and call this the height of hypocrisy. Quote, it comes to our attention that anti-police king of the defund movement in Austin, Greg Casar, who only last week called the police department in Austin an agency with racist practices and requested enhanced patrols around his house for the next week. Maybe he should hire private security like his fellow squad members do. Sure seems like he wants the police in his neighborhood, but he just doesn't want the police in your neighborhood. And that's always been the problem. These people, they want the things that they tell you shouldn't have. In fact, Vice President Kamala Harris and her husband videotaped, or I guess posted a picture over the Thanksgiving holiday with their gas stove, their natural gas stove in the background. Hey, look at us. We love to cook in the kitchen. We're normal Americans. We have our gas stove. They don't want you to have a gas stove. They don't want you to have a gas stove. They don't want you to have police protection in your neighborhood. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the U.S. Constitution says that it establishes that the federal government cannot create a presence in a state without the state's permission. So that begs the question. Now, you might understand that in California, the federal government can establish this Capitol Police unit in San Francisco. The state of California might allow that. But Florida? Why in Florida is this being allowed? And where's Ron DeSantis, who I love as a governor of Florida? He does a great job. Why is it that he's allowing the Capitol Police to expand there? Now, he hasn't made a comment on that yet. And we're still waiting to hear what he has to say about the expansion of the police state. This expansion of the police state, I would posit, I love that word, posit. I would posit has an even deeper and more evil approach in what they're doing there and the intent of establishing these little agencies around the country. We're going to talk about that in the moments ahead. Again, I want to hear from you. What do you think about the expansion of a police state, of the Capitol Police in other states? 615-737-9986. Get on the horn now. It's 2:20.
More hostages possibly getting back to their rightful homes with their families in Gaza. We'll let you know about that. Plus, the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency offering a reward. We'll tell you what for. 2:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, thanks, Mac. It's 2:23 here. And, you know, when that commercial reminded me of the fact that we are on Facebook and on YouTube, and Mac has a face for television. He does, doesn't he? He's got perfect teeth. His hair is nice.
That.
I mean, honestly.
Thank you.
And so when he's on, Belle, when he's on, the camera is on him, right?
Yeah, when he does his newscasts.
Yeah, when he does his. So when you're on, when you speak, do you put the camera on you?
Never.
Why?
Because I don't want to.
Ah.
Plus, you know, he spent a fortune making himself look good. So, you know.
Is that true, Mac?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm all natural.
Oh, that's right. Okay. All right. I went home, just a personal note yesterday. I get home and my son had texted me a picture of him and his family sitting in front of the TV, and up on the TV, I guess they streamed YouTube. And so the picture was everybody sitting on the floor in the living room and they're watching mom on TV.
Oh, I love that.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you could do that.
The pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, just so you're aware, he actually does have a nickname on the show.
Oh yeah?
It's Cougar Chow.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, Joan.
Yeah, you should be, Mac.
Here, let me play something for you. He has his own little segment that we do on Friday called the Mac Attack.
Oh, the Mac Attack. Okay.
This is the theme we use for it.
Oh my gosh. And so what happens during that segment? I mean, am I going to have to do this on Friday too?
Oh, you're welcome to. We could totally do it.
Yeah.
What we usually do now, I changed the format a little bit, is I choose something that we draft. We each get 3 picks in a draft, so we could draft, favorite ice cream flavors. We could draft, favorite, we did Christmas movies the other week, classic cars. You could draft anything. And so cereals we did one week. So yeah, I usually pick something, try and make it topical, and yeah, we just have a good time.
For the name, what do you call it? Cougar what?
Cougar Chow.
Cougar Chow. Yeah. For the name, that seems like such an insanely normal thing to do in your Cougar Chow segment. Like, really, cereals?
Well, no. The segment's called the Friday Mac Attack, but his nickname on the show is Cougar
I see.
Chow.
Okay. So, can I help you this week with what topics we pick?
Oh yeah, I'd love that.
All right,
That'd
so I'm gonna have to give it some thought.
Okay. Yes.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I'm excited.
What'd
Joan's
you do
gonna be in a
last
draft.
week? What'd you do last week?
We did Christmas movies last week, I believe.
Okay. Did Die Hard come in the Christmas movie list?
It didn't get drafted, but we all agreed it was one.
It was a Christmas movie, yeah.
So it is a Christmas movie?
That's what we agreed on.
Yeah, okay. Because I told you yesterday I watched it, and I don't know. Like, when you look at, go watch Holiday Inn. Are you guys like Holiday Inn guys?
I don't know if I've seen
White Christmas.
Oh, I love White Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a Christmas movie. No, I understand. It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
I guess that one's even debatable too, though.
If you can have a holiday that's based around somebody committing multiple acts of breaking and entering over the course of one night, I think it's okay to call Die Hard a Christmas movie.
Yeah, but I think the tone of the movies is a little bit different, and also the language in the movies is a whole lot different, right? Yeah, they are. Okay, 12:26 here, and I want to get back to this this discussion about the expansion of the police state. I want just one more time to play for you the audio from the video of Chief Tom Manger, who is the Capitol Police Chief, talking about needing more money and needing more officers.
The good news is that we are all making progress. We have more sworn employees today than ever before.
Yeah, we have
but
more.
But it's still not enough.
Well, it's still not enough. We have more sworn employees than we ever have before, but it's still not enough. So, and the Constitution provides for a way that the federal government can't do such a thing as long as it's not allowed by each state. So then I looked up what happens here in Tennessee. The Capitol Protection Unit, which is a unit of the specially trained state troopers. So it is within the state troopers. There's a unit that's called the State Capitol Unit, and they're specially charged and trained with the external and internal security tasks for the Tennessee State Capitol, Legislative Plaza, the Tennessee Supreme Court, and the War Memorial Building. So the services, it says, are provided also for other state buildings in downtown Nashville, where about 18,000 state government employees work every day. Now, their responsibilities include providing security for the members of the Tennessee General Assembly and their staff, as well as visiting dignitaries, other state employees, and to the citizens and tourists that may be visiting or conducting business on state property. So it begs to the question, if these new police units are being set up in Tampa, Florida, and in San Francisco, California, don't they have the same thing as we have here in Tennessee? The state troopers that have special training in order to be able to do the work that they're talking about for Tennessee State Capitol and providing the security detail. They say that some of the other duties for these specially trained Tennessee state troopers are investigating crashes, conducting criminal investigations, reported criminal activities. So it goes on and on about the things that they have to do. But one of the things that they're not charged to do is to arrest January 6th people felons, people who are about to be charged, anybody who they have identified that has been at the Capitol building on January 6, 2021. That's not among the things that they do. So it could be said that the Capitol Police will continue to set up these new areas, especially when you've got lawmakers like this one in Texas that has decided that he wants extra security because he feels threatened. And that, in my head, I'm thinking this is the way that they get attention to be drawn to their state. And now you set up a new one of those Capitol Police expanded field offices. And it continues in new state after new state after new state until they're in every state. And this becomes the government, the federal government, being able to branch out into every state and become the police force of the United States. I think it's a scary and really frightening thought. But that's where my head goes when I see stories like this. Can you talk me off a cliff? Honestly, can anybody do that? Give us a call at 615-737-9986. You can even text on that line. Let me know what you're thinking. Stand by. We've got more to come here the last half hour. It is 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7.
2:30, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 54 degrees, a sunny day in Nashville. We'll let you know how it could get cooler, what precipitation could come possibly later on this week, maybe even tonight. Weather, 5 minutes. President Biden spoke to Qatari officials to negotiate the release of more hostages, and a top aide also met with U.S. officials to discuss more aid into Gaza. Elizabeth Schulze is in the U.S. Virgin Islands traveling with President Biden.
Emphasize the urgent need to try to get the remaining hostages out. The White House said that, of course, includes the Americans who are still being held hostage. Remember that Qatar was the critical intermediary in the hostage negotiations for that first ceasefire. Qatar and Egypt together helped broker that deal to get the hostages out and to have that ceasefire in place. And it comes as there's this ongoing discussion over another ceasefire to try to get that in place while also getting more aid into Gaza.
And several hostage deals being discussed, the latest round ending in failure. It was a deal that would see a government overhaul there in Gaza. It was perceived by Hamas as something that would weaken it, so they did not agree to that. Right now in Tennessee, the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency trying to find out who's responsible for killing a young elk calf in Claiborne County. A hunter found the calf on December 22nd in the Valley Creek area. Officers say it was shot by a small caliber rifle. TWRA is now offering a $3,000 reward for information leading to the person or persons responsible for killing that elk. That is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hello there. It is 2:36. Joan Jones here on the Matt Murphy Show, and we're winding things down here. But, you know, this whole issue of a national police force led by the U.S. Capitol Police, which is currently busy setting up field offices in places outside of Washington, D.C., it has me scared out of my wits that this is going to expand and become the actual national police force.
I think you're overthinking it. Government really never grows that much.
Government's the only thing that's growing at the moment. Hey, Skit in Hendersonville, what are you thinking? Or can you talk me off the ledge here, or am I right?
No, I'm talking you off the ledge. There's a little piece of paper that stands that you can be thankful for that the Congress passed when they. I was part of the United States Capitol Police once upon a time, and I can tell you that way back there's a thing. It's written in the history, and Congress swore to it. And it keeps them from making more of them. It limits the size and scope of United States Capitol Police. And somebody's buried that in the history books. And I'm telling you, Joan, go back and find a piece of paper. I've seen it before. It's there. It was one of the founding documents for the police department.
You're talking about for the Capitol Police Department.
Police.
Okay. When were you with the Capitol Police?
Back in the 80s. Now you have to excuse me too. My home is originally in Annapolis, Maryland.
I just moved from Annapolis, Maryland. I love that place.
I know you did.
Yes, that's very cool.
That off Road Boulevard.
Where?
Off Road Boulevard.
Off Route Boulevard. How cool is that? Nice. I know exactly where you lived. Right by the hospital, right?
Well, now there's hospital. Back in those days, it was a field.
I see.
But it was long before the hospital.
Well, Skit, now where can I find this document that you're talking about with the national with the police?
Go back and look. It's in the history books.
All right.
But look in the documents, and it was it's been part of the founding of that police department.
I'm going to look for it, Skip. Yeah, I'm going to take a look for that. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. I've got something to do this afternoon when I go home. Hey, Mike in Lebanon, tell me about what you're thinking. Is this something that you see as being a possibility too?
To be honest with you, I think the national police is here already with Homeland Security. Like you and the gentleman on the phone a moment ago, I too am a transplant, but I'm from Michigan. And I was seeing more and more Homeland Security there. Now that I'm in the Nashville area, I see Homeland Security vehicles here. So I think we have a national police force already, but I still don't trust them with Capitol Police nationwide.
Now, Homeland Security, wouldn't you think that Homeland Security should be maybe by the border at this moment, trying to tamp things down there?
Oh, absolutely.
So what are they doing in Nashville?
But they've been here for years. I see their trucks around town. You know, it's a green and white truck. I saw them around Michigan quite often. And one of my best friends is a policeman. I told him that I saw this at a snow accident. And he goes, yeah, that's kind of scary, Mike. He says, I think that's their backdoor way of making a national police force, which is unconstitutional. This is right from a lieutenant.
From a lieutenant in the local police department?
In Michigan, where I'm from.
In Michigan. Okay.
Yeah.
Homeland
Security.
My
best friend. He said the same thing. So I don't trust them. They're already listening and looking in on everything. I don't know if you saw the little video. My understanding is Boost Mobile will start the first of the year censoring all text messages and looking for certain words and possibly fining people. Boy, they're just too many constitutional overreaches since this resident is in the White House.
And so many, I mean, it's like moving targets everywhere. We can't focus on one thing because there's 95,000 different flaming arrows heading our way every single day. That's something I'm going to have to look into, Boost Mobile.
You are 100% correct, and it scares me for my kids and my grandkids because they've already spent my great-grandkids' money.
Yes, they sure have, and your grandkids too. Yeah. Mike, thank you. Appreciate the call. Happy New Year to you as well. James is on the line from Gallatin. James, what are you thinking about this Capitol Police Force?
Well, I love the police. I've got family members that are police, but like the gentleman was saying before, there's something written down that stops them from being able to do certain things, and that's the same thing that we're seeing with President Donald Trump. They don't care what's written down. They're just trying to do whatever they want to do. And I believe Donald Trump. I've never met him, but I like what he did while he was president. And, I believe he's standing up for a lot of us just as far as when it comes to the Constitution. They took him off the ballot in Colorado because he was supposed to be involved in an insurrection. And he's never been to court or been found guilty for any of that. So
he wasn't even charged with it. Isn't that right, James? He wasn't even charged.
Right. So that's impossible to do that.
Right.
And people are saying, and I'm black. I'm 45 years old, born and raised in Sumner County in Gallatin. I'm a barber. So I've actually lost clients because I just get sick and tired of people believing that I'm just supposed to hate Donald Trump.
You're supposed to fall in line. You're supposed to fall in line.
Yeah, and I don't care about that line. I'm just going to tell the truth, and nobody wants to hear the truth. Just like the woman that asked the lady, can you give a definition of a woman? No, I can't. Simple stuff like that. And I believe Donald Trump is fighting for that. But what I wanted to say is, like I said, I'm a barber, and my business has doubled in the last 6 months, and all of them are illegal immigrants.
What was the last part of that? Your business has grown in the last 6 months because of
illegal immigrants. I can't speak to any of them, but they can point to a picture and tell me how they want their hair cut. I've had my truck stolen. I've had my bicycle stolen. I've had the barbershop vandalized, and my business is still growing. And my apartment complex, they've taken the rent up from $1,000 to $1,500. And the landlord said they can afford it because there's 6 of them in there, so I might as well charge it. And that's the thing that regular people are dealing with. And we've just allowed this border to be open, and they've all come over. Yeah, we need police, but we need them down there. We don't need them up here. Yeah. But now we need them up here because they're up here.
So Gallatin is where the illegals are going. Where are they staying in Gallatin?
They're walking, girl. They're walking. We've got a line, man. Are they working?
Yeah.
No. Right now, there's no work for them really because it's cold, and they're stealing and just I don't know what are they supposed to do.
Yeah. Apparently, they're supposed to hang out.
Some of them are going to work, but it's affecting us in the small town of Gallatin, Tennessee, because President Biden went in there and did whatever he did, and it's.
Oh, we see it happening every day. My goodness, James. Thanks for the call. Appreciate you calling in, and I hope your business still continues to expand. And you keep it real.
Yeah, I can't really complain. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I appreciate you holding the show down for us.
For Matt, thank you, and I'll keep doing that. James, appreciate the call. Thank you. Also, Jerry in Goodlettsville. You have an opinion about this Capitol Police thing. Am I wearing a tinfoil hat? Somebody accused me online in one of the...
That's Jason. He's crazy.
Jason? Okay. Well, Jason, I don't have a tinfoil hat. I think that this is for real. Jerry, what do you think? Hello, Jerry.
Gary?
Yeah, Jerry, that's you.
Yes. There's a gas station at Baker's Road in Goodlettsville. It's called Baker's Station. And there's a sign there that says, see something, say something, call Capitol Police, Washington, D.C., and it's a 1-800 number.
What?
Yeah.
Can you take a picture of that for me and send it to me?
Well, I'm heading that way now. Yes, I can. I saw it several years ago, so I'm assuming it's still there.
Oh, my goodness. All right, that's it. I do not have a tinfoil cap on because that tells me everything I need to know. So,
Okay.
So
will,
does it have a 202 telephone number?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, there was if I remember correctly, it was a 1-800 or a 202, but it was either or. But I'll take a picture of it. I should be in about 10 minutes, and I'll stop there and take a picture of it. I hope it's still there, but I definitely saw it because it was kind of ironic
That's
that
insane.
we should be calling Capitol Police when you see something, say something, call your own law enforcement.
You would think so. And what often happens when you see something and you say something? A, absolutely nothing happens, or B, they'll come out and question you about what the heck you're calling for.
Yeah, it's like you're maybe guilty, but and someone else did the crime. But I found it. I was pumping gas and I looked up there and I said, "Gosh darn it!"
Yeah. That is insane. I would love. So here's my email address. I'm going to give it to you. You're driving right now, but maybe you can remember it. It's joan.jones@cumulus.com.
At cumulus.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to look for that email, Jerry.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and Happy New Year to you. I just looked also on NBC News back in November of 2008. A Republican congressman from Georgia said Monday that he fears that President-elect Obama will establish a Gestapo-like security force to impose a Marxist dictatorship. Now, he says this may sound a bit crazy and off base, but the thing is, he's the one who proposed this national security force. So this was something that was not just ginned up and brought by people in tinfoil hats. By the way, thank you, 2565. Tinfoil hats are fashionable. But the Associated Press reported on this. He said, I'm just trying to bring to the fact that we may not, I hope not, but we have a problem with the type of philosophy of radical socialism or Marxism. Now, this doesn't sound like this guy had a tinfoil hat. But this is exactly what we're talking about. When you begin to see some of these police forces, a U.S. Capitol Police Force setting up shop in Tampa, Florida, in order to protect the senators and congressmen from that area, why? Why can't the local police force take care of it? Why is it that I think it was Gallatin, there's a sign that instructs you to call Capitol Police if you see something? Ray in Cookeville, I have 30 seconds. Can you do it for me?
Yes, I can.
Go ahead.
Cookeville.
I'm sorry, Cookeville.
Yeah. Okay. Let's liken the Capitol Police being the Cookeville Police. They can't come into dadgum Nashville and set up a station.
That would now, from what I'm reading about the provisions in the Constitution, it requires the Tennessee delegation to say, "Get out of here." And they can do that. They have the right to do that, which begs the question about why it's not happening in Florida.
Amen. You're correct. Okay. Thank you very much, though.
All right, Ray, appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to take off my tinfoil hat now. Now, I got 2 tinfoil hats, somebody said. I'm going to take it off, and we're going to end the show on a high note. I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but I'm going to give it a shot. It's 2:50 here at WTN. 2:51 here at WTN 99.7. I'm Joan Jones. I'm sitting in for Matt Murphy. Big shoes to fill. Trying my best. And Matt, I want to know. I can't look at those things. They're gigantic. There is a story today that you have to wear your tin hat for this one as well. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Are you ready for this? A NASA spacecraft that recently returned from deep space has been relaunched for a mission to study what's being called the God of Chaos asteroid as it begins to enter Earth's orbit. We could all die.
The one that's going to kill us all?
The one that's going to kill us all or put a really big hole in the Earth. They are
That's
real.
true.
Brian says they're real. They must be real. The spacecraft, OSIRIS-REx, I think its name is, has been sent off to study the asteroid Apophis, extremely close in a flyby of Earth in 2029, the likes of which hasn't happened since the dawn of recorded history.
And
We're all
I
doomed.
don't want to miss a thing.
Wow.
Wasn't that the song from
Armageddon?
Armageddon, yeah. Very nicely done.
I almost made a joke about Bruce Willis being on the flight, but that would be unfortunate given his medical circumstances.
Yeah,
but
let's not pick on him.
yeah, I always love the story of the asteroid. Well, I asked the question yesterday because I briefly talked about this story late into the Brian Wilson show, The Drive, yesterday.
Oh, you did?
Do you think they would tell us
If it's headed our way?
if they knew it was going to hit us?
I doubt it.
I don't think they would want to. I think it would be difficult for them to keep it from the general population, given the number of amateur, astronomers or
Sure.
scientists or pseudoscientists or whatever. But I do believe that they would want to keep it from us.
They would, but there'd be whistleblowers. And then those whistleblowers would be hauled off, jailed, because they're
But that's
scaring the public.
One of the reasons that I don't.
If Armageddon's coming, don't you just shoot them?
Well, maybe so, yeah. Shoot them with one of
That's
those
true.
water cannons. Love those water cannons. So, it's one of the reasons that I don't buy into grandiose conspiracy theories like 9/11 being an inside job or the JFK conspiracy that the CIA was involved. I mean, these types of things, moon landing hoax, these types of things would take thousands of people
Yes.
involved.
Yeah.
And the government can't keep any secrets.
Right. That's so true.
They can't keep
The
a secret
leaks
amongst
are
like four
incredible.
people. So, I mean, I have no illusions that they would leak
All right.
any sort of things like that.
Yeah, if you really want to find out what's going on in the government, all this behind-the-scenes stuff, just ask Bradley Manning or who's the guy in Russia?
Julian Assange?
Or no, the NSA, the guy that ran
Christopher Steele? Steele dossier?
No, the guy who's in
The
Russia.
PP papers? What?
Is he being held? Are you
No,
talking
no,
about
he's
Weinstein?
there. He's there under.
Navalny.
Anyway, if you got these people that are leaking
Navalny?
stuff
I'm going
left
with
and
Navalny.
right, and they won't. Snowden, Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
These guys leak stuff all the time, but we're not going to find out who
By
shot
the way,
Kennedy.
And by the way, excuse me, sir.
No.
I thought it was Chelsea Manning.
Oh, yeah.
How dare you mispronoun poor
Somebody
Chelsea?
please call HR on this man immediately.
He's desperately looking for a sound drop. He can't find it.
Find one.
He's looking for
That's
one.
appropriate.
Are you having fun? You sound like you're having a good time.
No, I am having fun. This is a lot of fun. You sure you want to come back?
I'm pretty sure that I don't want you to come back. I'm getting way too much. Man, Joan is doing a great job in your slot, Matt. Man, we don't miss you at all, Matt.
No, that's not true. They love you.
I don't
They
know
love you. And they make comments while I'm on the air. They make comments about you.
I don't, well, they're probably all bad. I don't, I'm doing Red Eye Radio from midnight to 5.
right.
I have for the last couple of days. Thankfully, I'm not doing it tonight. And I don't know what day it is. I feel this must be what a liberal Democrat feels like. I'm kind of swimmy in the head. I'm a little fuzzy. I don't really know what's going on. I
Yeah.
don't feel like I have a job. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is.
Yeah.
Is it Wednesday?
It's Wednesday.
Okay,
I
there
had
you
to
go.
look twice, too, so you're good.
This is one of those things where, I mean, everybody anticipates Christmas, and then the week after Christmas, we don't know what day it is, and we're full of cheese.
It's Kaflooey.
Kaflooey?
It's Kaflooey. Is that another one of those Northeast words?
What does that mean,
I was told
Kaflooey?
wackadoodle is one of those words.
Where are you
that I should-
originally from? Did
Summers
you tell me
Point,
this?
New Jersey.
That's right. You did tell me this.
Yeah, little town on the bay in New Jersey.
Because I mentioned that that's actually the green part of New Jersey.
The green, yes, we put the garden in the Garden State.
Sure.
Yeah.
Most people think of Newark.
I know, and it's sad.
Or Trenton.
Very sad.
And it is sad because Newark is dirtier than New York City.
And Elizabeth, New Jersey. Very dirty cities.
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth.
I don't think I know Elizabeth.
Yeah, it's near the airport. It's near.
Ever tell you the time that I got stopped driving in New York City on the island of Manhattan by a foot cop? It was pretty funny.
No. Did he jump out in front of your car to stop you?
No, he saw me breaking the law like 2 blocks up, and he was waving for me.
What did you do?
I accidentally ran a red light. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 19 years old. I was driving my vehicle in Manhattan at 19 years old, petrified. Absolutely petrified. I'd just come out of the Lincoln Tunnel.
That's a confusing area.
Oh, my gosh.
Way confusing.
Insane.
Yeah.
And he was trying to help me out. He started to give me a ticket, then decided not to. I remember the last thing he said to me is, "Watch the lights, Georgia," because I was living in Georgia at the time.
I got stopped yesterday on my way home from here.
Did you now?
Yeah, I did. So
you look like a lead foot.
No,
you do.
Actually, I'm not. I use my cruise control, and I was being very good. And I used to be a lead foot. I did. But this time, what I was doing, my sin, was that I was holding my phone like this.
Uh-oh. There you go.
Now, that's my fault because there's a microphone right above me. My phone's on Bluetooth. I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm talking into my phone. But the phone's out here. I'm not looking at it.
Pulls you over for the phone?
He pulled me over from my phone.
Did you get a ticket? Or
No.
What'd you do?
Smiled, winked, nod.
You give him the sad eyes.
No, just,
I'm so sorry.
Flash a little smile. Be nice to him.
Yeah.
I mean, generally.
Tell him where you work.
I did not pull that one.
I could own you. That always
Do you
works.
know who I wish I was?
Don't you know who I am?
Yeah, it didn't work. I mean, it was fine. He was very kind. And, once they go back and they look up your record and I guess they see that you're like not a serial phone watcher, they let you go.
Or a serial killer.
Or a serial killer.
Or someone that broke out of prison. You remember that story, Belle?
No.
So,
which one are you talking
years ago, the wife and I were going to a show at a theater in Birmingham, Alabama, and we get stopped. A guy's running plates at a light, and I see him running plates, and I don't think anything of it. Well, he pulls in behind us, and he stops. And obviously, he's run my plate. And before he gets out of the car, 3 other cars show up, and one of them does a little thing in front of my car.
Yeah.
Where they pin me in, and another goes to the side.
My.
Like they're being very serious. Well, they thought I was someone else that had broken out of prison in Mississippi.
Whoa.
Same first name, same last name, different middle initial, and our socials had gotten crossed
Did you
up.
look like him? I mean, you have a face for radio,
Well,
right?
they realized that I was not that person when they started going over all of his multiple facial tattoos, of which I had none.
Makeup can't cover that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Hey, it's Matt Murphy, and he is next here on 99.7 Super Talk.